Say, Drake, I heard you like 'em young.
What an intro.
If that wasn't the single most choreographed and rehearsed portion of Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl 59 halftime show, Apple Music halftime show, whatever the official title is, I don't know what was. Erik, Zachary, Tamara, Dhia, Spout podcast. Let's jump into this. I don't even want to call it a performance, this statement piece that was Kendrick Lamar last night.
That's a good way to say it. I like your intro, though, Erik. That's a great way to start this pod.
I just love the two camera, the smile. I love that United Airlines is out here with a meme already utilizing it, saying when you're walking and you see your bag go by, I'm like, damn, you have major brands that notoriously wouldn't touch anything controversial.
Yeah.
And now we're like, we're team K-Dot, man. That's insane. So, Tamara, I'll let you set the stage here because I know you're a little more versed in Kendrick, and I would love your initial thoughts first, and we'll go from there. But first reactions to Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show.
I will say, admittedly, I'm a lifelong Kendrick fan. I'm just a rap fan in general. So yeah. I will also say I am a Drake fan. But in regards to this rap beef, there was obviously a clear winner that was made evident multiple times over the last few months, but more times than most this past week when he swept at the Grammys and won 5 Grammys for this song alone, and then obviously performing it on the Super Bowl stage, the largest stage in U.S. capabilities, really, and had the entire stadium singing A minor and basically rapping that he's a you-know-what file. So it's been very... I would say that the nail has been put into Drake's coffin in regards to this rap beef over and over and over. And one of my favorite moments was when Serena Williams was doing the Crip Walk on the stage during the song. As many people may or may not know, Serena Williams and Drake did date in the past. So having...
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You didn't? I thought everyone knew that.
I mean, again, admittedly, I haven't been paying attention to Kendrick as long as you have, but no, when that started circulating online, I was like, wow, I had no idea. And that's just to get your ex-girlfriend too. Damn.
Well, it wasn't just one ex because SZA also dated Drake. So
that's right.
Kendrick Lamar had 2 of Drake's exes singing and dancing along to this diss track amongst millions of other people, obviously, around the world. So I'm sure Drake was... hopefully not watching, but my guess is he was. And, I would love to hear what Drake took away from this. I will say this. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, man, wouldn't that be a comeback if Drake releases like a reaction video?
Honestly, I would love that. I mean,
right.
It's the beef that keeps on giving. So I will say this, again, as a lifelong Kendrick Lamar fan, I thought it was interesting that he chose to do a lot of songs off of his new album when historically Super Bowl performances are kind of a catalog of the artist's biggest hits, which is why I think there's been a lot of critique over this performance, especially from people that are not well versed with Kendrick Lamar's music. So in that regard, I would have liked to see more of his bigger hits performed. But, the big takeaway obviously was him, having the entire stadium sing a diss track to Drake. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a Kendrick show that Kendrick showed up to do for Kendrick and Kendrick alone, right? He made it wildly apparent through metaphors, through literal just one-to-one recreations that this is a very clear message that is, if you bring me on to do a show and you want me to do my show, I'm going to do the show that I want to do.
Yes.
And he did a lot of press leading up to this where I think he was trying to brace people in his own Kendrick way that I think you might have seen this. I think it was with Apple Music where he said something along the lines of, I live in the present. I have a hard time living in the past. I don't focus on music from the past. I don't focus on projects from the past. I appreciate it, but that's not what I do. And I think a lot of people didn't read that one-to-one transparency enough that he was basically saying, listen, I'm not going to do any of my old stuff. I mean, to bring SZA out for such a brief blip too, to do probably the oldest songs that he performed is wild. The fact that he opened with an unreleased track, my co-host on my other show, XYZ, Jordan Foster, was the first one to acknowledge that he not only perform music that people might not be familiar with, but he changed so many of his lyrics and he was just rapping.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing a show that was for anyone else other than himself and for the message that he wanted to get across. And obviously bringing Samuel L. Jackson on as essentially the co-headliner or the surprise guest. You know? Samuel L. Jackson got more screen time than SZA did or than Serena Williams. And it was so threefold, right? It was, here's your surprise performer. Here's the deeper meaning of Uncle Sam and the plight of, you know, an African-American male in today's modern culture. And then here's him literally saying, shut up. This is what the people want. Dance, like do the songs that we want to hear. This is too ghetto. This is, I mean, these are one-to-one things that was all part of the messaging. And for Kendrick to acknowledge all of that ahead of time, it really just spits on the grave that is Certified Lover Boy, because it was 12 minutes of arguably the most impactful, whether you agree with it or not, social justice statement that we've ever seen.
Yes.
At least to something that's this widespread and this wide-reaching, which is one of the largest global televised events in the world. But then to spend the last 60 seconds and basically go, now that I got that out of the way, let me just literally dance on the grave that is Drake, and let me throw Game Over up in the stands. That's blows my mind.
Look, Kendrick Lamar is our petty king, and we love him for it, right? Like this man, every nuance is covered artistically. You know, like you said, there were so many undertones throughout that performance that go above just a rap beef, right? Like the social justices that you've already mentioned, and you know, I think a lot of people are still kind of catching these things as they're rewatching it over and over. So again, as a lifelong Kendrick Lamar fan, like this has always been his MO. Like this is just who he is as an artist, and that's why we love him so much, is because he's not afraid to speak out, but he's also petty, and he's going to throw in that 60 seconds that everyone was waiting for. And you know, the way he teased in the beat for Not Like Us before he even played it multiple times, like he's like, I know what y'all want, but hold on, let me get this off my chest real quick. And then he came in, and you know, that look to camera, that mischievous smile, saying Drake's name, like it was just so well played.
It was very orchestrated, right? And I mean, even just the acknowledgement, there's so many innuendos. I've watched it twice, 3 times now, and just looking at it as a music journalist, there's so many things that I want to take notes on. And it's a masterclass, truly. I'm not just being petty, because, you know, he is a short king, and short ends with T that rhymes with P that stands for petty. But with that said, thank you. My producers appreciated that one. With that said, I mean, even when he acknowledged, when he teased Not Like Us the first time, and they're like, you know, they're going to sue, like he's acknowledging all of the greater issues that were going on with this track. And we talked about it a little bit with our Grammys episode, but would he be allowed to perform this? Does he perform it? Does he put the spotlight on it? Obviously, we have those answers now, but I do still think there was a little bit of legal advice sprinkled in here, which is don't say the word pedophile. A, we're going to censor it, but B, don't do it because that is slanderous. You cannot prove that. So throw the mic, throw a sound effect on there, which is what he did. I was shocked he himself said A minor. I knew he was going to throw to the crowd, but you still heard him in the track go A minor.
Well, because A minor is a note, it's a chord, right? So for him,
well, literally, but you know,
well, that's how he can defend that. Like saying the word pedophile, obviously, is there's no other double entendre there, right? So that's a more direct implication if there is going to be a lawsuit. And you know, we've seen this before with other artists that can't say certain words because the NFL and obviously the Super Bowl is very brand safe, and it goes out to a largely more traditional crowd and audience. So, you know, that was obviously the big wonder, you know, is he going to say it? Is he going to perform it? And I mentioned this before, that I knew he was going to toss the mic to the crowd. He was going to let the crowd perform this song for him. And even when he said, you can't buy influence, was also another direct dig to Drake. Like, this entire stadium is singing this song. Like, you can't buy that. These aren't, you know, numbers that are fudged by your label or, you know, the fake streaming numbers. This is real life human beings that resonated with this song, so much so that the entire audience is singing these words for this artist who can't say the words because of the brand, you know, legalities. So Drizzy, we got to pour one out for him.
I do want to come back to that just pitiful look to the camera, which is Drizzy. What do you do now? We will close with that because I do have a question I want to propose to you. But before that, I'd be remiss if we didn't ruffle through the files of this performance just a little bit, which is everything from the use of A minor, not just the actual lyrics, but the fact that he had a lowercase a on his chest, and all the flags. This took me a second watch to catch that people were running in the background, the lowercase a, and then kids literally praising it. I mean,
well, let me stop you right there, because I know this is like the number one thing that people are going to. People are also forgetting that PG Lang, his label, that is the logo of their label.
That's the logo for it.
Yes,
okay.
It is literally.
See, that's good to know.
The logo is literally kids with their hands up to the lowercase a. So
it's just very helpful that it could be perceived as a double entendre.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, we know that Kendrick loves double and triple entendres, so I don't think it is a total coincidence. But yeah, that is part of the logo. So just throwing that out there so that people also understand that it's not that on the nose.
No, good information to have. It was an interesting, let's touch on the widespread acceptance or rejection of this halftime show, right? Again, understanding that this wasn't a show for anyone other than Kendrick and Kendrick fans, or the greater mass understanding of a message that he's trying to get across. I would be interested if Apple doesn't play it safe next year, or if for the next 2 to 3 years they go, okay, because they're still very much trying to cement their name to the halftime performance, right? For years it was Pepsi since its inception. So for Apple to come through and open with Rihanna, which again, like it, hate it, right, wrong, or indifferent, was a very different twist on a halftime show. She had no guest. She was obviously pregnant at the time, so her physical movements and dancing were limited and whatnot. And a lot of it was built into a larger performance. That was her flying up and down on these giant Mario Party levers or Super Smash Bros. Levers. But then the next year, then you had Usher, which did basically, he brought Vegas to the stage, right? What he's been doing for his residency. Now you have Kendrick. Next year, do you pick the most, I don't want to say popular as a shot to Kendrick, because, as far as rap goes, you cannot be more popular than Kendrick Lamar right now. But is that the most mass? Does that have the most mass appeal? Is it, and to your point too, do you pick someone that at least will play the quote unquote game that's probably the root of Kendrick's larger messaging here, which is, no, I'm not going to play your game. I'm not going to basically tidy this up and make this the show people want me to do. Do you pick an artist next year that will do that for Apple and for the bigger NFL audience? You've had 3 very, very different shows. So next year, do you continue trying to make each one more unique than the last, or do you kind of come back to center, which is picking someone like a Taylor Swift, throwing it out there, that, has a little more mass appeal?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could go either way, really. Like, I kind of appreciate the direction that it's gone. I love Apple Music. I think they're doing a great job with the halftime show, especially taking the realm from Pepsi, like you said, that's hold this crown for so long. But I also, I love the hits. I love like the upbeat. Like I was yesterday, I was kind of going through some of the older Super Bowl performances, and the one with Coldplay where he brought out Beyonce and Bruno Mars, which is one of my favorites of all time. So
because you forget Coldplay was the halftime performer.
Totally, but like that,
it was Bruno and Beyonce who had both done it themselves years before.
Right. So in that moment, but it was such a big moment, right? Or like, there's moments that are seared into your brain, like when Prince performed it, and it was like the guitar and the rain. Yeah, the rain. So it's like there's moments that are kind of seared into your brain, and for us, this moment that is seared into our brain with Kendrick is aligns with Drake. So I would like. I loved it. I'm not going to say I didn't. I loved it. I have my own personal, I wish I could have heard some of his songs that I love so much. Like I love Money Trees, one of my favorite songs. Would have loved to hear that. But again, that's like a small gripe, right? So I don't know. Like who would you like to see? Like what artist would you like to see? Because I don't think they'll bring Taylor because she's kind of become so involved with the NFL. I think they would love to have her. It seems like she's declined multiple times.
Yeah. I think if Taylor plays it, at least anytime in the next 5 years, it will be next year, right? Coming off of a Chiefs loss and not even playing into the romance between her and Travis Kelce and all these memes that are out there of her yelling at him to play better and whatever it may be. Although I do think there's a small portion of her that could be like, let me show you how it's done, and takes over the field. I think if it's not next year, then it's not anytime in the near future, because my personal opinion is that the halftime show no longer belongs to one person. I think Kendrick, I will make this bet that he's probably the last solo performer, even though I know SZA was a part of it, a very brief part of it. But I think they've found too much mass appeal in bringing oddities together, whether that's Bruno Mars and Red Hot Chili Peppers, or like you said, Bruno, Beyonce, Coldplay.
Right.
When you look back at all these different moments, it's always who was the surprise guest. Even going back to JT and Janet,
right?
Even though that wasn't necessarily a good memory, that was a memory that is seared into our brain.
Sure, totally. Or even with I think Aerosmith and Britney and NSYNC.
And NSYNC, yeah. I think that they definitely come back to that. You know, we had the Celebration of Hip Hop show 3 years ago, and I think that that's the new center, because you also have Beyonce doing a random one-off Christmas Day game where I could argue that her halftime show was more of a halftime show, and the Super Bowl lens than Kendrick's was.
And it got comparable viewers too.
Oh, easily. And especially if we start to really put the focus on specific games with the power of streaming, it brings it all home, right? Because there used to be a time not that long ago, and I know some people are going to hear this and be like, I don't know what you're talking about, where only certain games were televised. You had to know what channel a game was going to be on. And if you were in a certain region, that was the only way to watch it. You didn't just have NFL All Access passes.
Yeah.
You didn't have streamers that carried every single variation. You didn't have 4 squares of TV that could play all these games simultaneously.
Yeah.
So streamers, Amazon and Netflix primarily, are going to be working really hard to try to get as many eyes on one game than they ever could. And that's A, with matchups, but B, with the accoutrements they can put around an NFL game, which are full-blown concerts and halftime shows.
Right.
I think that we're going to see next year a lot of specialty and unique games. Obviously, we know that there's NFL games planned for Ireland and for London again, and international games. But you're going to see the same thing kind of parallel with the musical performances. No longer is it a Jack Harlow kind of mailing it in for a Thanksgiving Day
that was so bad.
Halftime show.
Sorry, Jack.
I like Jack Harlow.
Jack Harlow, but that performance was not good. Sorry.
Yeah, or at least they're not going to be highlighted and televised in the same capacity. I think if you say someone's playing the halftime show, now they're going to start to build in a budget for it. And no one's going to be Beyonce, but it's going to be, this halftime show is part of Netflix. We want your eyes on it live, and we're going to give you a reason to watch it.
Yeah.
Because we do live in a world now where production has come so far that they can essentially produce that stuff with fairly little notice. That the halftime show itself, if it remains at the top of the game and remains that pinnacle of achievement for entertainers, it can no longer belong to one person.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I also kind of wait for the big special guest. That's a huge moment. We knew SZA was coming out because they'd announced that prior to the Super Bowl. And the big special guest being Samuel L. Jackson was fun. But like from a music perspective, we were looking for a big musical artist, right? So I would have loved to, there have been a moment where he came out with Rihanna because they have one of my favorite songs together. Is it anybody that you would lie for? Anybody you would slide for? Anybody you would die for? That's what I said. I'm geek and I'm fired up. And you know, so he's done some excellent collabs. So that would have been really cool. Although we know Rihanna doesn't touch music these days, so who knows? Although she is going to do a song for the Smurf soundtrack. I know. Thank God. Yeah. Forget R9. At least you got a Smurf song, Tamara. I know. Well, I imagine it's more for her kiddos more than anything. But you know, I think I'm inclined to believe with, or I'm inclined to agree with you on this, because it does make it a little more impactful when there's multiple huge artists that jump on the stage, especially when it's a big surprise. For us, the big surprise was Serena Williams. Like that to me, like me and some of the other people that we were watching the Super Bowl with, like got up and started screaming, you know, we were like, oh my God, because we also knew the lore, you know, behind the Drake and Serena relationship. So there was she was kind of, that was a nice little jab to her ex, which I'm sure we've all wanted to do, but to do it on the Super Bowl stage. I did find it interesting that they even announced SZA ahead of time, because it would have been more impactful at that point had they just brought her out as a surprise, because she was on for such a limited portion, right? And for short versions of 2 songs, basically. Right. And I don't know for certain, but from my technical knowledge, it looks like that she was not singing live in any capacity whatsoever. Okay, so this is kind of the conversation that's happening online right now, currently at the moment, is was she singing live? As someone who's been to many of her shows, probably 10 of her shows, her live vocals are not generally that strong. Not as polished as what we're used to hearing on the recorded track. Right. And that's honestly, a lot of artists are like that. I'm not going to put all that spotlight on SZA specifically, but specifically for the Super Bowl performance, it did not sound like she was live. She might have had her mic on, but her backtrack was super loud. And anyone that's ever been in a stadium like that, there's always a backtrack, right? Always. There's always going to be one. But usually it's lower.
There's no major artist that you listen to that doesn't use it. It just doesn't exist, certainly in a broadcast capability. But with that said, I think a lot of artists now, instead of using or quote unquote lip syncing to the degree that they used to, and that we're used to from the early 2000s or even earlier, most will use just an auto-tune track. It's an actual plugin that in real time is adjusting your pitch, right? It's not a magic box, the way that people paint it as, oh, that's auto-tune. It can't just make anyone a singer, not in real time, at least maybe next year with AI, but it can take most vocals and make them sound fairly polished. Again, I don't want to say anything definitely because I was not on the Apple production team, but I'm pretty well versed in technology and production and live broadcasts, as Tamara knows. And I just, in my personal opinion, no part of that was live at all in any capacity.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards your side of this reasoning. Kendrick was live.
And I think that's what made it so obvious too, is that Kendrick's rapping was so live with such a lack of assistant vocals that when you have someone who is very apparently using a track, and the only singer, by the way, the only melody voice that is there, it was even more obvious. Because she wasn't even doing anything that strenuous that would have caused her to.
She did that one move where she was like, and I was like, yes.
That one move that it's like, I definitely have to lip sync this entire performance.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to make any apologies for her. I would love to have artists sing live. I think it's especially in big moments like that, it's important. But again, SZA's vocals are not big vocals. Like her strength is kind of being like a little more
subtle.
Yeah, exactly. Like her strength is in a smaller venue. That's just what it is. It doesn't mean she's not a great artist.
Speaking of smaller venues and Drake's future, let's end on this. How
that's a shot.
In your personal opinion, Tamara, because I have my thoughts, but I'll reserve.
Yes.
How does Drake bounce back from a mass appeal standpoint in the U.S.? How does
he needs to disappear?
I think it's fair to say he's lost a lot of the rap crowd, at least in the immediate future.
He needs to disappear for a while. I know he's dropping an album on Valentine's Day with Cardi. We've spoken about this. And again, I do believe that him coming out with music, the only way he can drop music right now is to go more in this like ballad lover boy sector. If he was going to drop any rap music, then people would be dissecting it so hard. But I still think this is a mistake too. I think his best bet right now is to just disappear for 2 years, and not in a mean way. Like just fall off the radar for 2 years. He's been such a heavy presence in the music industry for over a decade at the top, and he's just been knocked down. Fall off. 2 years, go back into the writing camp, go back into like getting new beats, go back into being inspired by some other, like he was very heavily inspired by Afro beats or like Canadian culture or UK grime for a while. So like go back to finding something to be inspired by and come back out with something new, fresh and different and show us why you were at the top for so long. And just because you've been knocked off doesn't mean you can't get back on. You know what I mean? But it's going to take time.
I agree with you. I'm inclined to agree with most of what you're saying. I think gone are the days where Drake can play an arena in the United States unless he seismically changes his appearance as a performer. I think he's got to go very pop, very mainstream, lean heavy into the, like you said, the melodic, the singing, the tracks that we loved him for from 2014 through 2018. But you kind of lost the ability of having any credibility, certainly in the near future. And to your point, he's built a very available presence. Even when he's not at a concert or doing an interview, he'll just jump online for no reason and say things. And that's not unlike a lot of pop culture people that we have in our lives and on Twitter or online. But with that said, you've responded and reacted to so many things in your life, including this beef with Kendrick, that for you just to not react to it and act like it didn't happen and then just keep releasing music. That's like that kid in class that's like, well, anything if you say it to me, I'm not going to acknowledge it, and then it's going to go away. It's like, no, until you say something, people are never going to stop talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, Kendrick Lamar has been dancing on the grave of Drake for weeks now, months now, really, truly. But I do think him just kind of falling off the radar is his best bet. But he loves his little duck face selfies. And, well, you can't take that away from him. So he's really, I think that would be his best move. But, we'll see. I guess we're just going to have to wait and find out.
We'll see what happens with Drake. We'll see what happens with the Super Bowl halftime show. I'm excited to just see what happens for live performance and bigger scale productions being streamed direct to consumers, direct to viewers next season. And I'm excited to see what happens. Am I missing something? Is there anything big in music that's coming up now between now and festival season? Because there's not going to be any live performances at the Oscars. They've already announced that they're not having them perform best song or songs up for Song of the Year in Motion Picture.
Which I think is a miss. I think
it's a huge miss, but that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, exactly.
But with that said, I don't think we have any big televised music events. If I'm missing something, comment below. Let us know, please.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Until Coachella takes off, I don't know that there's anything.
I mean, the Met is coming up, and they do usually have a performer that they don't stream to the public.
Televised, but we hear about.
But we hear about obviously on the internet. So I'm not sure who the performer is this year for the Met. But last year it was Ariana Grande. So. Yeah.
Oh, good. But, her and Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah.
Haven't heard enough from them.
Whoa. Just kidding.
Wow. We'll end on that. Erik, Zachary, Tamara, Dhia, Spout podcast. One more time for the kids in back, Tamara. Hit that note for me.
I'm out.